Sheila here with Sirius Dallas Moon. This is Venus Hour, and this is Venus Night. Venus in 4 degrees Scorpio, in the 6th house, ruled by Mars, 4 degrees Sag. So, Moon is 29 degrees Cancer, and I made 2 Jupiter talismans today. Both very intense and very benevolent. I won't be managing to do another Jupiter talisman tonight, even though I wanted to. The moon is 29 degrees, although it's in the 2nd house, but Venus is detriment in the 6th house, ruler of the hour. And there we have Mercury, which is in the 7th, also detriment and retrograde. But there were some pretty good elections. Both ascendant midheaven ruled by Jupiter, particularly the first election. The second one, I finished right when the midheaven and ascendant were at the end of the Jupiter signs. So one was 5th house, the other one, no, both was 5th house. One was moon hour, one was Jupiter hour. Both of them had limited time, and we see how the moon Jupiter trining Saturn gave us limited time, because Saturn is limit and time. But both came out quite well, and I'm just gonna put them out there to bask and bathe in the lunar rays um, for another month. Also, very interesting consecrations, and what I saw was an era of femininity. Now, probably it has to do with Uranus finishing up in Taurus, but also in the fact that even when it comes to the World War, a lot of the Nazi ideology has to do with dealing with femininity, whether it is by putting women in certain archetypes or even killing women. But in any case, a lot of energy is invested in women, good and bad. Okay, and consequently, in a roundabout way, even when it comes to like women, like intersex people, even the topic of really hot topics came about today. Really hot topics came about today, and yeah, really hot topics came about today, and um, while it did make me wonder about many things, it also kind of made me notice the fact that there's just going to be quite some femininity topics. And even when it came to men, it was about men being intersex, or even when I talked about the scent, like the scent also being of intersex scent, having also feminine scent. This is such a Venus Scorpio ruling Uranus in Taurus topic. But I also noticed that whether they like women, hate women, Uranus brings liberation in the sense of they're gonna talk about women. They're gonna invest a lot of energy in women, whether it is even to try to kill them. And yeah, like Uranus is such that this is why Uranus, people that have, Donald Trump has Uranus in Gemini, um, and he knows how to make a controversy and profit off of being controversial. And Beyonce has Uranus Sun, I think. Uranus Sun or Uranus, something with Uranus in Scorpio, and I think it's next to her Sun, or even Mars. And she really knows how to strategize on being extremely controversial. And even so much so that even when she falls to the nitty gritties, it's going to be always this kind of like they're going to talk about, and this is what Uranus does. In wherever Uranus touches, they're going to talk about where Uranus at. And the very conversation creates an energy invested in women that women can utilize, or it's definitely going to provoke, but it's also provoking the discourse. And there's something about this that is really coming to liberate and show us that without the feminine, without the feminine, it's a really dull place. And without honoring the feminine, there's no feminine. And here, Uranus is also very rebellious. So when we try to tame the feminine with Uranus Taurus, it's always going to go in a it's always going to rebel. Whether it's women trying to connect to their own feminine in a particular way, or um, or women trying to curb their feminine side to kind of look like, I don't know, woman boss or something like that. Uranus is going to not even let women themselves rest on their laurels in that sense. And the Uranus divorces at the Decan of Spirit and Matter are really going to be about um, going to the essence of things. So I said what I said, because a lot of the trafficking campaigns were playing out on notions of femininity that was the Madonna and the whore. So the Madonna had to be at home to raise the children and to actually have sex after marriage. The man would have to go supposedly to the whore. I don't know how it works with gay couples, but I think it's kind of like that, because in the secret societies they were also doing um, like gay men that are not born into secret societies kind of have it. They are lucky in the sense that they're not born into the secret societies, and there is kind of like really no box for them. Like it's they're like the outcast of the outcast, which is both a privilege and isolating at the same time. So um, now within those societies, there was feminization ritual, and a part of these societies, like the hardcore of these societies, like the clone people, um, some of them are even intersex. So um, and a lot of it is shedding shit ton of trauma that has to do with ritual abuse, trafficking, people having to traffic. Even we got to Vanguard funding. Now we had elections in the Netherlands, and Vanguard funding. It's impossible not to call it D666. I'm sorry. And um, a part of the policies that they force the politicians to go for is in itself a part of the ritual abuse. Okay, and I'm not going to touch on the gender issue. Um, okay, I can say something. When Mark Rutte was prime minister, his job was to privatize everything, and he himself was living as a single man alone, and stating that being the last taboo in Netherlands for a man to live alone in an apartment without having gazillion of projections on him. Okay, and imagine that such a person would have to commit policies that would deprive people of the ability to live alone in a home as a single man or woman. And that is, okay, to further enhance such policies, which is a part of the ritual abuse against the very candidates. Um, did I not see it happening with the gender issue? I did. Again, I don't want to I don't want to out anybody. I don't want to assume anybody's gender. Um, there, and when it comes to the topic of ritual abuse and trafficking, we have to understand that everybody there was trafficked, and everybody there was supposed to traffic, and we have to, and that was to consolidate wealth. And creation of war, but also creation of peace talks. So now that with Saturn and Neptune, I believe that the Rolodex name lists are gonna come out, and I found some surprises there. you know, it was my prediction. I see it happening. I found some surprises there, and of course, I also addressed it on my Facebook. Everybody there was trafficked. Everybody there was basically the children that nobody came to save, and we need to put an end to wealth consolidation by trafficking and so on, um, and to trafficking and to ritual abuse, regardless of gender, regardless of role in society, regardless of origin, class, and so on and so forth. Um, so the Uranian relations that are happening right now at the Deacon of Spirit and Matter pinpoint affairs, okay? Because Uranus is even I have my astrology teacher Lada Duncheva had her third marriage upon a Uranus involvement with her current husband. They stayed married, they raised a family, and indeed, when she was married the second time, Nicholas Stoyanovich, that was her teacher, predicted that she will divorce and be married the third time, and indeed that happened. Now, I know Slavic tradition, Vedic tradition, Western tradition, all very different. Okay, it's none of that represents accurately and to the detail my own view upon relationships, which is in itself growing. But the point was that both she and her husband met when her husband divorced and she divorced, and there was a Uranus union between them, Uranus aspects between them, that made this marriage happen. So Uranus, even when it denotes marriage, for example, my mother has it in the seventh house, and she married suddenly and unusually to a man that came from another country, and everybody thought he was from the UN. It's like, where did your father serve? NATO. One of them in the IDF, one of them in NATO, and no, it's not a gay marriage. What's the third party? Mom. It was not a third. And so, um, I was under the impression it's like this that this is Netherlands or something, but no. Apparently, that was just a happy 60s. Although they married in 73, and And that was not even the happy 60s because most of the 60s were rape. So I don't know, we got lucky. I have no idea. But then they were married for 14 years and divorced, which was also unusual. So the Uranian relations around the deacon of spirit and matter, which also bring Beta Persei into the mix, those are the type of marriages and divorces that have to do with people escaping human trafficking, people escaping Nazi ideology, people escaping Nazi occult. I even had the notion, like the Eureka, that I'm like an astrologer that forced my entire community to deal with the fact that there is an astrologer that talks about MK often and ritual abuse, while people were trying to sift and sort and normalize doing occult and so on. And nobody really wanted to talk about ritual abuse. They all want to educate the people that, occult is not what they say it is, but it's kind of like, well, there is ritual abuse done. And they do it in astrological elections. And And who says that? A freaking astrologer that refused to go by those things. I have my teacher, Alada Duncheva. She is astrologer and she's also Christian. And, and she's also Slavic, which is unusual to combine all. And her father was a revolutionary, and so I have Uranus in the 10th house, so I don't know if my father was reactionary or revolutionary. It's not nothing that I was exposed to because I grew up with my mom, um, and yeah, like I honestly don't know. I have no idea, but I can definitely see how that plays about, um, and that sets into the deep of the deep of the deep of the things that run the show because they run by astrological elections and their occult is Nazi, okay? Women rights versus Nazis. Human trafficking versus, okay, women rights. And they would try to make human trafficking women rights, which is not. It's actually a continuum of Nazis. And ritual abuse versus women rights. Why women? And I was like, why women? Why women? Why women? Well, I don't fucking know. They want to do emasculation, but they harm the feminine for no good reason. And by that, they misalign the masculine because the feminine becomes traumatic to the masculine and the masculine becomes traumatic to the feminine. Now, the unions around this last decan of Taurus are very unique. And it can be, you know, one person left Nazi ideology, one person, is dealing with. And when I say Nazi ideology, people are like thinking Nazi Germany. No. It's gonna take some time. Because I think each and every country or tribe or not yet country can see what I'm talking about. Mid-heaven on that Malgedi as I speak. Mm. Now, Uranus is also provoking or unexpected new information, exciting information as well. Venus can have to do with female sex. In Venus is in the sign of sex, so female sex, um, and definitely there were things coming about around that. Um, so there's also excitement, discovery, um, joy. Um, and you know what? I was thinking about the intersex related to cloning project. Not all intersex people are with cloning project and so on and so forth. Um, but also the fact that Nazi ideology is about killing women, which is, and people talk about cisgender women. It's kind of like, wait a second, wait a second, um, because a lot of it can have to do with inclusivity around intersex people or around people that have unusual features. But this is also the fact that ritual abuse and torture projects um, are the issue, not the superficial topics around that. Now, definitely, Uranus Venus revolutionizes how we see sexuality, particularly with Venus Scorpio. Um, our sexual psychology, and so on and so forth, eroticism, attraction, and when we talk about the Uranus affairs, there is always what needs to be liberated. And here in that deacon, it is ritual abuse. Liberation from ritual abuse, liberation from trafficking, liberation from rape based cultures, religions, relations, and international relations. Um, currencies, ideologies with Uranus. Okay, Uranus points to itself as well. And and as that happens, that long sought liberation happens as well. Um, Uranus always tends to shock us, and it exposes both. It exposes both the both the spectrum of um, whether it's something unusual about relation, whether it's non-commitment, somebody's genitals not being usual, um, gender, or even with the plain chromosomes, um, or what would be, or how would that be affecting people, or how would that be affecting the gender experience. And Uranus is all that. Um, and it's also about exposing whether somebody has been involved in ritual abuse, trafficking, sexual missbruk. Um, and it's going to, and a lot of, if couples can separate on that background, it can, in a very light tone, it can be about somebody, just not being straight, and that being reason to divorce in union. Um, or it can be somebody been Rolodexing. and and the unusualness of the affair can be liberating because it is exposure. Now, here's the thing: a lot of the people have to do lover girl, lover boy when it comes to those things. And when one insists on a love and that is actually loving, that exposes stuff. That exposes stuff because um, something can't stay the same, and the information begins to explode into existence. This is because the Kundalini rise of everyone involved is rising. It's coming to liberate from these notions, preconceived notions of sexuality, but also all the programming. Uranus is both Uranus coming to liberate from the programming where Uranus was supposed to be the programming. And because the maintenance of normal, which, okay, the maintenance of normal, or the family man, or, or sending out the women. For example, in Epstein, there was a lady that was sent to communicate with the girls because they would not think that a lady is doing those type of things. Um, and that is exploding. And that's so beautiful because the truth is coming out. And this is where the play on, if somebody is an option, if somebody doesn't go with the monogamous, Puritan, whatnot, family, mother of, which is a veil, then they would immediately be placed in that box of trafficable, while the very lady, the very Missy, is trafficked oak, and the very man is also trafficked. So, Annika Lucas, episode 9. And and this is exactly the type of deacon where those, how should I say that? Now I understand something that happened to me in 2014, 15, 2013. Um, but this is really about those so-called affairs that were meant to put someone in trafficking situation can't hide under the guise of side option, okay, anymore. Because the torture around putting both parties in that situation is being revealed, is being unveiled. Mm-hmm. So the truth is coming out that it's both liberating and life-saving. Because what happens, if I think about people like Trudy Verstegen, where her children were taken away from her, it doesn't matter how elite society was in, how engulfed by elite society, whether it's going to law school, whether it's being a parliament member, a parliament member, whether it's being back then married to a banker, whether it's being, you know, and then beginning to talk about when it came to the children, beginning to talk about and having her children taken away, everything came out. All the truth came out. Everything about everything about everything about everything came out. And no longer would anybody be able to maintain a facade. And that is basically a woman that was put in a life and death situation. Now, with that, it became some sort of a form of communication that was never there before. It was a venue of delivering information. There was never there before. And there was somebody that was some woman that was speaking out the things that anybody within the society who tried would have been fear and assassination and horrid things. That's the power of Uranus going through Taurus and going through the last decan where Beta Persei is. When people are in risk of being trafficked, no PC stands in their way. I mean, it explodes everything. This is why I said that the divorces that are going to happen here are going to happen on the background of somebody was about to be, or somebody was with an Epstein, or somebody. And the more now, Uranus will not be secluded, would not be. It is Uranus here is divorce of arranged marriage, because within certain circles where there would be the matchmakers, and Uranus here, those that had a social engineering program to put a person, whether it's the president, or whether it's this, or whether it's that, she's going to be with this, he's going to be with that, all this carefully elected, carefully engineered, boom! And this boom is a series of explosions around the entire network that goes boom. Because nobody is willing to live that kind of life anymore, from within and outside. The cost of trafficking became so evident. It's like you don't want to talk, you don't want people to talk about or even post pictures of here is what the genitals of so and so would look like. Don't traffic children or adults. Don't ritually abuse. And this is where it's happening upon the well transition of who's going to be the next Kissingers, who's going to be the next Vanguards, who's going to be the next BlackRocks. You can't be putting cameras in between I don't know, of the bedrooms of tenants and expect not to see the supposed model of genitals of the people that were in charge of making those decisions a government rule, global or local. Now, the hidden blessing is also that there were some secrets and they came about in the most blunt way, okay, because Uranus is blunt, but sometimes what the secret was is not that overwhelming as the fact that the abuse should not be anymore. People don't want to be outed. Let them not participate in trafficking people or in policies that funnel the wealth outside of people so to put them in ritual abuse and trafficking situations. And if up until now a rebellion was not even possible because who would even believe, even if politicians would come out and say, yes, there's a plan, ta 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 ta. The closest was JFK. I know there was some guy that talked about against the WHO. Now, we have to understand that all of them are enmeshed with those type of things. So there was no being a politician without being in an open air prison with Epstein, as a man or a woman, and pretending that it's fun, pretending that it's, or taking a shitload of drugs of. Because since age zero is being praised for being evil, and that every kindness is used as a part of the evil scheme. And this is why the separations or the divorces that happen on this decan are about divorcing from what contributed to the Medusa stories. To those that try to make of those who speak against rape a walking satire. Instead of turning to abolish rape.